Maya sat on the edge of her bed, her phone glowing in her hand. The wedding invitation lay open on the nightstand, mocking her with golden letters and elegant calligraphy. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Daniel Harris and Emily Brooks. Her ex. The man she once thought she would spend her forever with. Now, he was marrying someone else. She had promised herself she wouldn't care, but the lump in her throat and the way her hands trembled told a different story. It wasn't that she still loved him, at least that's what she kept telling herself. It was the humiliation. The thought of showing up alone, walking into a room filled with people who knew their history, seeing the whispers, the pitiful looks. Her best friend Claire had said it bluntly last night over wine. You can't show up by yourself, Maya. That's practically handing them gossip on a silver platter. You need a date, a distraction, someone who makes them stop and think, wow, she's doing even better. Maya had laughed then, brushing it off. But now, staring at the invitation, she realized Claire was right. Still, who would she ask? She scrolled through her contacts. No one felt right. Her coworkers would find it weird. Her neighbors were too nosy, and asking someone from a dating app just to parade them around at her ex's wedding felt desperate. Her thumb hovered over a name she hadn't thought about in a while. Ethan Walker. Ethan lived across the hall, a single dad she'd shared polite hellos and occasional small talk with. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair always a little tousled, like he'd just come back from chasing after his son. She often heard the little boy's giggles echoing in the hallway, followed by Ethan's warm, patient voice. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't someone who demanded attention in a crowded room, but there was something steady about him, solid, like he wouldn't crumble under pressure, and maybe, just maybe, he'd be willing to help her out. Her heart pounded as she typed out the message. Hey, Ethan, this might sound crazy, but I need a huge favor. She hesitated before hitting send. This was ridiculous, wasn't it? Asking her neighbor, someone she barely knew, to pretend to be her date at her ex's wedding? What if he thought she was out of her mind? Before she could chicken out, she pressed send. The 3 little dots appeared almost instantly. Sure. What's the favor? Her stomach flipped. She quickly typed, would you maybe consider being my date to a wedding next weekend? Long story, but it's my ex's wedding and I'd rather not go alone. She hit send and stared at the screen, chewing her lip. Seconds stretched into minutes. Just as she was about to throw her phone across the room in regret, his reply popped up. Your ex's wedding, huh? That sounds complicated, but if you need me, I'll do it. Maya blinked, rereading the words. He wasn't even hesitating. No questions, no judgment, just yes. Her fingers trembled as she typed back, are you sure? I don't want to drag you into drama. His reply came with a smiley face. I'm a single dad. Drama comes with the job. I'll handle it. For the first time since the invitation arrived, Maya laughed. Really laughed. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that saying yes to Ethan Walker might change far more than just how people looked at her during her ex's wedding. The following Saturday morning, Maya stood in front of her closet, frowning at the array of dresses. She wasn't at the wedding yet. That was still a week away. But Ethan had texted her the night before. We should probably meet for coffee, talk through the details. I don't want to accidentally say the wrong thing and blow our cover. Cover. The word made her laugh nervously. It sounded like they were going undercover for some secret mission instead of just showing up together at a wedding. Still, he was right. They needed a plan. She slipped into a soft blue sundress and tied her hair in a low ponytail before heading out. Across the hall, she knocked lightly on Ethan's door. It opened almost immediately, and she was greeted by a pair of curious eyes. His son, Max. Hi, Maya, Max chirped, his little face lighting up. He was maybe 7, with Ethan's dark hair and a grin that could melt even the coldest heart. Hey, Max, she said warmly. Is your dad around? Yeah, Dad, Maya's here, Max called into the apartment. Ethan appeared a moment later, tugging on a gray t-shirt as he walked out of the hallway. His hair was damp, like he'd just showered, and for a second Maya forgot how to speak. Ready? He asked casually, grabbing his keys from the counter. Yeah, she managed. They ended up at a small cafe down the street, tucked into a corner booth with steaming cups of coffee between them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but it was filled with unspoken questions. Finally, Ethan leaned back and folded his arms. "So, tell me everything I need to know. Start from the beginning." Maya stared into her cup. "Daniel and I dated for 3 years. We even got engaged for a little while. But he called it off, said he wasn't ready for marriage." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And now he's marrying someone else?" Her throat tightened. "Yeah, less than 2 years later." "Yikes," Ethan muttered. "That's brutal." Maya forced a smile. "So you see why showing up alone isn't really an option. Everyone there knows our history. I don't want to look pathetic." Ethan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, so we're going to give them a show. You're not pathetic. You're moving on. With someone new." His matter-of-fact tone made her chest feel oddly lighter. They spent the next hour going over their story. How they met, neighbors, which was true. How long they'd been seeing each other. A few months sounded believable enough. What he did for work, graphic designer, which Maya already knew. "Do you want to practice?" Ethan asked suddenly. She blinked. "Practice what?" He leaned forward, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Pretending. Smiling at each other like we're more than neighbors. Maybe holding hands. You know, the stuff people do when they're dating." Her cheeks flushed. "Oh, right." Before she could overthink it, he reached across the table and gently took her hand. His palm was warm, his grip steady. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, and she prayed it didn't show on her face. "Not bad," he said, giving her hand a squeeze before letting go. "You'll have to get used to it, though. Weddings are full of cameras and nosy relatives." Maya nodded, trying to ignore the way her heart was racing. This was supposed to be pretend. Just a cover. Nothing more. But when Ethan smiled at her across the table, calm and reassuring, a thought crept into her mind that she quickly shoved away. What if, for just one night, pretending didn't feel so fake after all? The week leading up to the wedding seemed to crawl and rush by at the same time. Maya busied herself with work, but every time she walked past Ethan's door or heard Max's laughter in the hallway, she felt a nervous flutter in her chest. 2 nights before the big day, Ethan knocked on her door. Maya opened it, surprised to see him holding a small box. "What's this?" she asked. He smiled a little awkwardly. "Cufflinks. I don't really go to fancy events, so I figured I should at least look like I belong. Thought you could help me pick the right pair." Maya laughed softly, motioning for him to come in. They sat at her kitchen table, the box open between them. Inside were 3 sets, classic silver, sleek black, and a quirky pair shaped like tiny guitars. "Definitely not the guitars," Maya said, suppressing a grin. "Ah, come on," Ethan teased, pretending to pout. "They'd make a statement. You're supposed to make my ex jealous, not confuse him." Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them looked away. Something passed between them, unspoken, but undeniable. Maya quickly cleared her throat and pointed to the silver pair. "These, timeless and sharp." Ethan nodded. "Silver it is." He closed the box, then glanced at her. "You ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," she said quietly. The next evening arrived faster than she expected. Maya stood in front of the mirror in a deep emerald dress that hugged her curves and shimmered under the light. She had chosen it deliberately. It was bold, powerful, nothing like the soft pastel gowns she used to wear when Daniel was still in her life. A knock sounded at her door. Taking a deep breath, she opened it. Ethan stood there in a black suit that fit him perfectly, the silver cufflinks catching the light. For a second, Maya forgot how to breathe. "You look..." His voice trailed off before he finished with a crooked smile. "Incredible." Heat rushed to her cheeks. "So do you." They walked down together, side by side. At the car, Ethan opened the door for her, a small gesture that made her chest tighten unexpectedly. On the way to the venue, Max's name came up. "Are you sure he's okay?" Maya asked. "Yeah," Ethan said, smiling. "My sister's watching him. He's probably bossing her around already." The way his eyes softened when he talked about his son made Maya's heart ache in a strange, unfamiliar way. When they finally pulled up to the grand hotel where the wedding was being held, Maya's nerves returned in full force. The valet opened her door, and she stepped out, trying to steady her breathing. Cameras flashed near the entrance, guests in designer dresses and sharp tuxedos milling about. Ethan offered his arm. "Ready, partner?" She slipped her hand through his arm, holding on a little tighter than she intended. "Ready?" Inside, the air buzzed with music and chatter. Heads turned as they walked in together. Maya could practically feel the whispers. And then she saw him. Daniel, standing near the bar in a perfectly tailored navy suit, his new bride Emily by his side. They looked radiant, picture perfect, everything she once thought she wanted. Her stomach dropped, but before panic could set in, Ethan leaned close and whispered in her ear, "Remember, they don't get to define you anymore. You're here with me. Focus on that." His breath against her skin sent a shiver through her, grounding her in a way she hadn't expected. She looked up at him, meeting his steady gaze, and for the first time that evening, she truly believed she could handle this. Then Daniel's eyes landed on her, and widened. Daniel's gaze locked on Maya as if the entire room had vanished. For a split second, she almost saw the flicker of surprise, maybe even regret, in his eyes. His new bride, Emily, was busy greeting another couple, and hadn't noticed yet. Maya's heart raced, but before the old ache could crawl back, Ethan squeezed her hand. His presence was like a steady anchor in stormy waters. "Smile," he murmured softly, his lips barely moving. And she did. A dazzling smile that wasn't forced this time, because the warmth of Ethan's hand against hers made it feel real. They moved through the crowd gracefully, Ethan greeting strangers like he belonged there. He asked her questions in between introductions, about the food, the decor, even whispered a sarcastic comment about the oversized floral centerpieces that made her choke back laughter. He kept her distracted, and for that, she was grateful. Eventually, Daniel and Emily made their way over. "Maya," Daniel said, his voice smooth but strained. "I didn't know you'd be here." Maya tilted her chin. "It's a wedding, Daniel. Of course I'd be here." His eyes flicked to Ethan, who stood tall, calm, and undeniably confident. "And you brought a guest." "Not just a guest," Ethan said evenly, extending his hand. "Ethan Walker, Maya's date." Daniel shook his hand, his grip just a little too firm. Ethan didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled in a way that was polite but also just a little victorious. Emily finally turned, her face lighting up. "Maya! Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you." She hugged Maya quickly, oblivious to the undercurrents between the men. "And who's this?" "My boyfriend," Maya said smoothly, the words slipping out easier than she expected. "Ethan." Ethan didn't miss a beat. He slid an arm around her waist, drawing her closer. "It's a pleasure," he said warmly to Emily. If Daniel noticed the way Ethan's thumb brushed lightly against Maya's side, grounding her, he didn't show it. But his jaw tightened. The conversation was brief, polite words, fake smiles, and then the couple was pulled away by another group of guests. As soon as they were gone, Maya exhaled. "That was intense." Ethan leaned down, whispering in her ear, "You handled it like a pro." She laughed softly, tension easing. "Thanks to you." The night unfolded with music and speeches, clinking glasses and laughter. Yet every now and then, Daniel's gaze would drift toward Maya and Ethan. And every time, Ethan would lean in close, whispering something that made Maya smile or laugh, making it look effortless. At one point, when the slow music started, Ethan held out his hand. "Dance with me?" Maya hesitated. "Ethan, come on. If we're going to sell this, we might as well go all in." She placed her hand in his, and he led her to the dance floor. His arm slipped around her waist, pulling her gently against him, while her hand rested on his shoulder. The world seemed to blur. The music, the chatter, the lights. All she could focus on was the steady rhythm of his heartbeat under her palm and the warmth of his gaze as he looked down at her. "You're doing great," he murmured. She swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "You make it easy." And for a dangerous moment, Maya forgot they were pretending. The music swelled, and Ethan spun her gently, then drew her back in. Maya couldn't remember the last time she had danced like this, when the world faded away and nothing mattered but the person holding her. When the song ended, applause broke out as other couples clapped and laughed, but Maya and Ethan lingered a moment longer before slowly pulling apart. As they walked back to their table, Maya felt Daniel's eyes on her again. For the first time, instead of feeling small or insecure, she felt triumphant. "You're enjoying this," she whispered to Ethan as they sat down. He gave a small, amused smile. "What gave me away?" "The smug little grin you keep trying to hide?" He chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "What can I say? Watching your ex squirm is kind of satisfying." She laughed, shaking her head. "I shouldn't enjoy it, but I do." The evening moved on. Dinner was served. Steak with roasted vegetables, a dish Maya barely touched because she was too caught up in the buzz of emotions swirling inside her. At one point, Claire, her best friend, spotted her from across the room and came rushing over. "Maya!" Claire whispered excitedly, giving her a once-over before glancing at Ethan. "Oh my God, is this him?" Ethan stood politely, offering his hand. Ethan Walker. Neighbor, date, partner in crime, apparently. Claire's eyes sparkled with delight. "He's perfect, absolutely perfect. Where have you been hiding him?" Maya felt her face warm. "He's just been across the hall." Claire leaned closer, lowering her voice so only Maya could hear. "Daniel looks like he swallowed a lemon every time he sees you two together. I swear this is the best wedding I've ever attended." Maya tried not to laugh. Ethan, noticing her struggle, casually slipped his hand over hers under the table. The gesture was simple, but it sent a rush of warmth through her veins. Later in the evening, after the cake was served and glasses of champagne were poured, Maya excused herself to step outside for some air. The cool night breeze felt refreshing against her skin. She didn't hear Ethan approach until he was beside her. "Doing okay?" he asked softly. "Yeah," she said, exhaling slowly. "Better than I thought I'd be." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the lights twinkle across the hotel gardens. Then Maya turned to him. "Why did you say yes, Ethan? You barely knew me. Most people would have run the other way." He looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "Because you asked, and you looked like you really needed someone in your corner." Her chest tightened. "That's more than I expected." He gave her a small smile. "Besides, it's not like I mind spending time with you." Her heart skipped at his words, her breath catching slightly. But before she could reply, a familiar voice called her name. "Maya." She froze. Turning, she saw Daniel standing a few feet away, his expression unreadable. Emily was nowhere in sight. Ethan straightened, subtly shifting closer to her, his presence protective. "What do you want, Daniel?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite the sudden pounding of her heart. Daniel's gaze flicked to Ethan, then back to her. "I just needed a minute alone with you." Maya's stomach tightened. She had no idea what he could possibly want to say now, but the look in his eyes told her it was something she wasn't prepared for. The night air felt heavier now, thick with tension. Ethan didn't move, but Maya could sense the quiet strength in him, like a shield between her and Daniel. "I don't think we have anything left to say, Daniel," Maya replied firmly. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Maybe not, but seeing you tonight, it stirred things up. I didn't expect you to be here, and certainly not with him." Maya folded her arms. "Why does it matter? You're married now." His eyes softened for a flicker of a second, the way they used to when he'd try to charm her out of an argument. "Because part of me thought you'd still be waiting." The words hit like a slap. Ethan's hand brushed lightly against hers, not holding, just reminding her he was there. Maya inhaled sharply, her voice cutting through the night. "You don't get to say that to me. You ended us, Daniel. You left me wondering what was wrong with me, and then you turned around and gave everything you said you weren't ready for to someone else." Daniel flinched. "I made a mistake." The audacity made her laugh bitterly. "A mistake? No, Daniel, you made a choice, and now you have to live with it." For a moment, silence fell between them. Daniel's gaze shifted to Ethan, standing solid and unshaken. "And you really expect me to believe this is real?" he asked, gesturing at them. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly, but his voice was calm, steady. "I don't really care what you believe. What matters is that Maya deserves better than someone who only realizes her worth when it's too late." Maya's heart clenched. The sincerity in Ethan's words felt too real for just an act. Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line, his expression unreadable. Without another word, he turned and walked back inside, disappearing into the glow of the reception. Maya exhaled shakily, only realizing then that she'd been holding her breath. "Wow," she whispered. "That was intense." Ethan glanced at her, his eyes softening. "You okay?" "I think so," she said, though her voice wavered. "I just wasn't expecting him to say those things." "Of course he did," Ethan muttered. "Guys like him always think they can walk back into your life whenever they feel like it." She looked up at him, her chest tightening again, though this time not with anger or pain, but something warmer, steadier. "Thank you, Ethan, for being here, for everything tonight." He gave her that easy smile again, the one that made her feel like she could breathe. Any time. And for a moment, standing under the twinkling lights with Ethan beside her, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in years, safe, valued, maybe even cherished. But as she looked back toward the glowing ballroom where her ex-husband now celebrated his new life, she couldn't help but wonder, was Ethan's kindness just part of the act, or was there something real building between them? When Maya and Ethan walked back into the ballroom, heads turned again. She could almost feel the speculation buzzing around them. But instead of shrinking under the weight of it, she straightened her shoulders and slipped her arm through Ethan's, letting herself lean into the comfort of his steady presence. The DJ's voice cut through the chatter, calling couples back onto the dance floor. A lively tune started, laughter rising as guests flooded the space. "Want to dance again?" Ethan asked, his eyes glinting with playful challenge. She hesitated, then smiled. "Why not?" This time, the dance was less about appearances and more about fun. Ethan twirled her dramatically, making her laugh until her cheeks hurt. At one point, he even dipped her low, earning a round of applause from onlookers. Maya's heart raced, but not from nerves. She felt alive, free in a way she hadn't in years. When the song ended, Maya and Ethan made their way back to their table. Claire reappeared, clutching her champagne flute, grinning ear to ear. "You two are stealing the show," she whispered. "Seriously, half the room is talking about how stunning you look together." Maya felt her cheeks warm. "We're just playing our parts." Claire gave her a look that said she wasn't buying it. "Sure, keep telling yourself that." Then she winked at Ethan. "Don't break her heart, okay?" Ethan's expression softened. "I wouldn't dream of it." The sincerity in his tone made Maya's chest ache in a way she couldn't quite explain. Later, as the night wound down and guests began trickling out, Maya found herself on the balcony again, this time watching the stars scatter across the dark sky. The noise of the party faded, leaving only the distant hum of music. "You disappeared on me," Ethan said, stepping beside her. "Needed some fresh air," she replied, hugging her arms. "You've been amazing tonight," he said quietly. She turned to him, surprised. "Me? You're the one who handled everything so smoothly. You even made Claire fall in love with you." He chuckled. "That's just a bonus. But Maya, you walked into your ex's wedding and held your head high. That takes guts." Her throat tightened. "I didn't feel very strong when Daniel asked to talk to me." Ethan's voice softened. "You were stronger than you think. You didn't let him pull you back into his orbit. You drew the line." Maya's eyes glistened, the truth of his words sinking deep. "I couldn't have done it without you." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was tender, almost reverent. "Maya," he began, his voice low, but before he could finish, the doors to the ballroom burst open. A group of guests stumbled out, laughing loudly, breaking the fragile intimacy of the moment. Maya stepped back, her heart racing, unsure if she was disappointed or relieved. Ethan cleared his throat, slipping his hands into his pockets. "We should probably head out. It's getting late." She nodded, her mind spinning. On the drive home, silence filled the car, not heavy, but charged, like unspoken words lingered in the space between them. Maya stared out the window, replaying every glance, every touch from the evening, her heart aching with confusion. When they reached her building, Ethan walked her to her door. "Thank you again," she said softly, her hand lingering on the doorknob. "Anytime," he replied, his gaze steady, searching. "Good night, Maya." "Good night," she whispered, closing the door gently behind her. Leaning against the wood, she pressed a hand to her chest, her pulse racing. Pretending wasn't supposed to feel like this. The morning after the wedding, Maya woke up later than usual, sunlight spilling through the curtains. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand with a text. "Ethan. Coffee later? I owe you a post-wedding debrief." She smiled despite herself. Somehow, the thought of seeing him again made her stomach flutter in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. By noon, she found herself knocking on Ethan's door. Max answered, his face lighting up. "Maya!" he exclaimed, throwing his arms around her waist. "Dad said you went to a fancy party yesterday. Did you dance?" Maya laughed, ruffling his hair. "I did, and your dad's a pretty good dancer." Max's eyes widened dramatically. "Really? Dad, you didn't tell me that." From the kitchen, Ethan's amused voice floated out. "Some things are better kept secret, buddy." Maya followed Max inside. Ethan was making pancakes, flipping them expertly in the pan. He looked relaxed, still a little rumpled in a t-shirt and jeans, and yet something about him made her breath catch. "Want some?" he asked, holding up the spatula. "Sure," she said, taking a seat at the table while Max chattered about his latest Lego creation. Breakfast was warm, easy, filled with laughter. It felt natural, like she belonged there, in that little kitchen, part of their world. After Max ran off to his room to play, Ethan poured 2 fresh cups of coffee and sat across from her. "So," he said, leaning back, "how do you feel after last night?" Maya took a slow sip, gathering her thoughts. "Stronger. Lighter, somehow. I thought it would destroy me, seeing Daniel marry someone else. But instead, it just closed the chapter. For good." Ethan's gaze softened. "I'm glad. You deserved that." Her eyes met his, lingering a little too long. "And you were incredible. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," he said simply. "I meant it when I told him. You deserve better. Always." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. This wasn't just about pretending anymore. She could feel it in the way he looked at her, in the warmth of his presence. "Ethan," she began, her voice faltering. But before she could say more, Max barreled back into the room, clutching a Lego spaceship. "Look, it's done." Ethan grinned, ruffling his son's hair. "That's amazing, buddy." Maya smiled, but deep down, her heart twisted. This wasn't just about her. Ethan had a whole world. A son who depended on him, a life built around being a father. Could she step into that? Did she even have the right to think about it? Still, as she watched Ethan laugh with Max, the answer tugged at her quietly, insistently. Maybe she didn't just want him to be her fake date. Maybe she wanted him. Messy, complicated life and all. But before Maya could unravel those feelings, her phone buzzed with an unexpected message from an unknown number. "Maya, we need to talk. It's about Daniel." Her breath caught.